You say you care about freedom. You say you would have resisted, that you would never bow to a tyrant, that you're too smart, too moral, too aware. But late at night, when the world feels chaotic and uncertain, when the news makes your stomach tighten and your future feels like fog, don't you feel it, that quiet, dangerous desire for someone to take control, someone loud, certain, unapologetic, someone who promises to cut through the confusion and tell you exactly who to blame? This isn't about those people. It's about you, and it's about a truth so uncomfortable that most of us would rather not look at it. The human heart does not only long for freedom, it longs for relief. In 1943, while imprisoned by the Nazis, the German theologian Dietrich Bonhoeffer wrote something strange. He didn't say that evil triumphed because people were monstrous. He said it triumphed because of stupidity, but he didn't mean low intelligence. He meant something darker, a kind of voluntary surrender of thinking, a retreat from responsibility, a willingness to let someone else decide what is true. According to Bonhoeffer, under certain pressures, people don't become evil, they become obedient. Let's rewind even further. In ancient Athens, Plato warned that democracy carries a hidden danger. When freedom becomes overwhelming, when everyone shouts and no one agrees, people grow tired, confused, anxious, and in that chaos they begin to crave order. Plato believed that out of extreme freedom, tyranny is born, not because a monster storms the gates, but because the people open them. Why? Because freedom is heavy. It requires doubt, discernment, self-reflection, responsibility. It forces you to admit, I might be wrong. And that's exhausting. Certainty, on the other hand, feels good. Certainty feels like solid ground when someone stands on a stage and says, I alone can fix this. Part of you feels relieved. Finally, someone who sounds sure, someone who doesn't hesitate. You mistake confidence for competence. You mistake dominance for strength. And slowly, without realizing it, you trade your questions for slogans. Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote about what he called the herd instinct. He believed most people don't truly want to think independently. They want safety, belonging, approval. The herd protects you from the terror of standing alone, but the herd also demands something in return. Your voice, your doubt, your nuance. Nietzsche saw that when people feel weak or resentful, they often seek power through identification. They attach themselves to a powerful leader and say, his strength is my strength. It's intoxicating if your life feels small. Aligning yourself with something grand feels like expansion, but it's borrowed power, and borrowed power comes with a cost. History is full of examples, not just obvious dictators, but charismatic figures who rose because they spoke to fear. Niccolo Machiavelli observed that it is safer for a ruler to be feared than loved. If he cannot be both, why? Because fear is simple. Love requires complexity, trust. Patience. Fear only requires a threat. And when people are afraid of economic collapse, cultural change, loss of identity, they become easier to direct. Fear narrows your world. It shrinks your imagination. It makes you desperate for protection, and the one who promises protection becomes your savior, even if he is the one quietly setting the fire. But here's the twist that no one likes to admit. Corrupt leaders don't just manipulate. They reveal the cracks already inside us, the resentment we never dealt with, the insecurities we buried, the envy we disguised as moral outrage. A leader who blames minorities, outsiders, elites, or enemies, doesn't create hatred from nothing. He amplifies what is already whispering in the crowd, and when the crowd roars back, something terrifying happens. The individual dissolves. You are no longer responsible. You are no longer guilty. They are, and in that fusion, conscience grows quiet. Psychologists call this de-individuation. When you merge into a group, your personal moral compass weakens. You feel less accountable, more powerful, more righteous. You felt it before in online mobs, in heated arguments. In moments where the group's anger swept you away, it feels electric, but it also makes you capable of things you never do alone. Bonhoeffer noticed this in Nazi Germany. Ordinary people, teachers, doctors, neighbors, participated in atrocities not because they were demons, but because they stopped thinking as individuals. They outsourced their judgment, and once you outsource your judgment, you can outsource your empathy too. But this isn't just about extreme regimes. It's about the subtle ways you seek authority in your own life. When you avoid making hard decisions and wait for someone to tell you what to do. When you cling to influencers, ideologies, or movements that promise simple answers to complex problems. When you silence your doubts because it's uncomfortable to disagree with your tribe, you tell yourself you're being loyal, but sometimes you're just being afraid of being wrong, afraid of being alone, afraid of the chaos of uncertainty. Here's the uncomfortable truth: you don't just fear tyrants, you fear freedom. Freedom means no one is coming to save you. Freedom means you must think, and thinking is dangerous. It destabilizes your identity. It forces you to question your side, your heroes, your assumptions. It's much easier to chant than to contemplate, much easier to condemn than to understand, much easier to obey than to decide. But there is another kind of strength. It's quieter. It doesn't shout. It doesn't promise miracles. It's the strength to sit with ambiguity, to say, I don't know, to resist the emotional rush of collective outrage, to evaluate leaders not by how they make you feel, but by how they wield power. Real strength is not dominance. It's discipline, the discipline to question even those you admire, the discipline to hold your tribe accountable, the discipline to stand alone if necessary. Plato believed that the unexamined life is not worth living. Nietzsche believed that you must become who you are, not who the herd demands. Bonhoeffer believed that silence in the face of injustice is itself injustice, and Machiavelli, in his cold realism, reminds us that power will always seek to preserve itself. These thinkers disagree on many things, but they converge on one haunting idea. Human beings are fragile in the face of power, not because we are stupid, but because we are afraid. So the next time you feel drawn to a figure who promises certainty, ask yourself, is this courage, or is this relief? Are you supporting strength, or are you escaping responsibility? Because the most dangerous leaders are not the ones who seize power by force. They are the ones we invite, and the ones who mirror our fears back to us and call it truth. The ones who make obedience feel like virtue. Imagine a society where people refuse that seduction, where citizens are harder to manipulate because they've confronted their own insecurities, where disagreement is not betrayal, where complexity is not weakness. That society doesn't begin in parliaments. or protests. It begins in the quiet moments when you choose to think for yourself, when you resist the comfort of blind allegiance, when you accept that freedom is heavy and carry it anyway. You are not immune. None of us have the capacity to worship corrupt leaders lives in the same heart that longs for safety, belonging, and certainty. But so does something else: conscience, discernment, courage. The question is not whether strongmen will appear. They always do. The question is whether you will recognize the part of yourself that wants them, and whether you will have the strength to say no, even when saying yes would feel so much easier, because the battle for freedom is not first fought in the streets. It is fought in the mind, and it is fought quietly inside you.